The room fell silent before Queen Camilla had even finished her first sentence. Across the polished table, Meghan Markle stared at the folder in the Queen's hands, realizing that private requests she believed had vanished into palace archives were about to be read aloud. This was no ordinary disagreement over protocol. It was a devastating exposure of hidden demands, involving royal access, public status, private residences, security privileges, and a role Meghan had never been formally promised. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Camilla kept her voice steady as King Charles, Prince William, Catherine, and Prince Harry waited for the next blow. She had summoned this restricted palace meeting after finding a sealed record from former Sussex representatives. A restricted meeting meant only those directly involved could attend, without advisors present. Every reaction would be impossible to hide. The Queen Consort opened the file and named the demands one by one. Permanent apartments at Windsor, independent royal security, guaranteed balcony appearances, private access to palace staff, formal recognition as a senior international representative of the Crown. Windsor was a vital royal estate. Meghan had not asked for courtesy. She had asked for lasting status. Meghan gripped the edge of her chair as each condition was spoken aloud. Her face tightened, but the greater shock came from Harry. He turned toward his wife with disbelief instead of protection. The Duke had known discussions were taking place, yet the scale of these requests was new to him. His silence cut deeper than any accusation, leaving her alone. Camilla then placed a second sealed envelope beside the folder. She explained that the list had been accompanied by conditions describing what Meghan expected in return for attending future royal events. It was a proposed bargain, linking family appearances to privileges the palace had never approved. Charles reached for one page and stopped midway through the paragraph. The king recognized language from a confidential conversation about reconciliation, repeated almost word for word. Someone close to him had carried private thoughts beyond the palace walls. His expression hardened as he set the page down. The monarch pushed the folder across the table. Meghan looked at it, then pulled her hand back. William noticed. Catherine lowered her eyes. The humiliation had become intimate. Then Harry finally spoke. "Did you submit all of this without telling me?" That question did not merely divide husband and wife. It forced everyone in the room to confront how much Meghan had wanted, how long Camilla had known, and who stood to lose the most when the full truth emerged. To understand why Camilla's revelation struck with such force, one must understand the two women facing each other across that table. Meghan saw herself as a modern royal voice who had been denied the freedom and influence she deserved. Camilla saw a monarchy that survived only because personal ambition was restrained. Between those opposing beliefs stood Harry, Charles, William, and Catherine, each carrying a private fear about what the confrontation could destroy. Meghan believed royal life had taken more from her than the public understood. Leaving Britain had brought freedom, but it had also cost her official status, palace protection, and the powerful platform she once expected to shape. The hidden demands were her attempt to recover that influence without returning to full royal restrictions. A senior royal role meant an official position representing the crown through duties, ceremonies, and public service. She wanted parts of that authority, but not the control surrounding it. Camilla viewed the situation through a harsher lens. She had spent years defending a fragile place inside the monarchy, enduring judgment while learning that survival depended on restraint. The Queen Consort believed privilege had to be earned through service. To her, Meghan was asking for royal access without royal discipline, public importance without daily responsibility, and protection without accountability. Harry followed Meghan into a side room moments after the first disclosure. He closed the door and asked why the full list had been hidden from him. Meghan insisted she had acted to protect their children, secure their future, and prevent the palace from controlling every return to Britain. Yet the Duke heard something else. Where she expected him to hear sacrifice, he heard calculation. Catherine remained near William, but she found no satisfaction in Meghan's humiliation. The princess remembered private attempts to calm tensions between the two households, and knew this exposure would make reconciliation even harder. She looked toward Meghan with sadness, then toward Harry with concern. Pain was spreading across the family faster than blame could contain it. William studied the dates attached to the requests. Several had been submitted before major royal ceremonies, including balcony appearances and national celebrations. The prince began to suspect a deliberate strategy. Make the requests when refusal would look cold, then allow public pressure to force the palace into agreement. Charles quietly admitted to Camilla that he had once considered offering Harry's family limited accommodation during visits. The king had wanted his son close again. She immediately understood the danger. Meghan may have mistaken his hesitation for weakness and his affection for permission. The monarch later found Harry in a private corridor and placed a hand on his shoulder. His son stepped back. "I no longer know whether this palace feared Meghan," Harry said, "or whether it simply wanted to defeat her." Charles looked wounded, but Catherine had already noticed the deeper truth. She quietly told William that the list could not be understood without returning to one earlier royal event, the night Meghan first demanded treatment equal to the direct heirs. The true beginning was not inside the emergency meeting at all. It was hidden in a ceremony months earlier, when one private exchange transformed frustration into a secret campaign for power. Every royal crisis has a moment that later appears inevitable. For Meghan, that moment came during a private Windsor reception held after a major family ceremony. The guests saw polite smiles and controlled greetings. Behind a closed door, however, Meghan confronted a senior palace coordinator and demanded confirmation that she and Harry would receive the same arrival privileges, security escort, accommodation, and ceremonial placement granted to William and Catherine. The refusal changed everything. Meghan entered the gathering already feeling watched. She knew every movement had been carefully planned to keep attention on the central royal event, and she resented the idea that her presence might be treated as a disruption. A private Windsor reception was a family gathering hosted within the royal estate, where access, entrances, and introductions were controlled according to rank and duty. Harry sensed her frustration, but he believed the evening could still pass without conflict. The tension sharpened when Meghan learned that William and Catherine would enter through the sovereign's private reception route. That route was reserved for the monarch and senior working royals, whose arrival formed part of the official ceremony. She and Harry had been assigned a separate entrance, without a formal announcement or ceremonial escort. To Meghan, the difference felt deliberate. To the palace, it reflected their position outside active royal service. Meghan requested a private conversation with the senior coordinator and followed the official into a small antechamber. She did not ask for a simple change that evening. She stated that she would not attend future ceremonies unless the palace provided written guarantees of equal arrival status, royal accommodation, dedicated security, and a defined public role. The coordinator tried to explain that ceremonial placement followed responsibility, not personal importance. Meghan refused to accept that distinction. Harry entered after the exchange had already begun. He heard his wife speaking about dignity and basic respect, but he did not hear the full list of written conditions. Meghan told him the dispute concerned unequal treatment. She never explained that she had demanded commitments extending far beyond that single reception. Camilla saw the coordinator emerge moments later, visibly shaken, and holding hurried notes from the conversation. The Queen Consort asked what had happened. Meghan answered calmly that she had only clarified expectations. That response stayed with Camilla because the official's reaction suggested something far more serious. The coordinator later created a documented account of the exchange and attached it to correspondence sent by former Sussex representatives. Over the following months, the requests expanded. They became more detailed, more strategic, and more politically dangerous. One message referred directly to Charles's desire for family reconciliation, arguing that renewed palace access would help restore his relationship with Harry. Camilla read that line as emotional pressure against her husband. The king's love was no longer simply personal. It had become leverage. Meghan sat beside Harry in the waiting car after the reception, her voice cold and controlled. "They made their choice," she said. The Duke asked what had truly happened, but she gave him nothing more. He did not realize she had already begun making her own choice. Months of hidden correspondence now led back to one closed room, where Camilla was ready to ask Meghan whether reconciliation had ever been her real goal. Camilla did not raise her voice. She did something far more devastating. She read Meghan's demands slowly, clearly, and directly to her face. Every sentence tightened the room. Every condition stripped away another layer of plausible denial. Meghan attempted to interrupt, but the Queen continued until she reached the clause that changed the atmosphere entirely. The Sussexes would consider attending major royal occasions only if their position, security, accommodation, and public visibility were confirmed in advance. Harry returned from his private conversation with Meghan, carrying more doubt than certainty. No advisors sat between the family members now. That mattered, because an emergency palace meeting was a restricted gathering, used to address urgent royal matters, without outside voices shaping the discussion. Every pause, glance, and hesitation belonged to them alone. Camilla opened the documented account and explained that these were not casual requests. They had been divided into categories, covering royal property, ceremonial appearances, private staffing, security protection, titles, and media access. Each category had conditions. Each condition pointed toward the same goal: influence without surrendering control. Meghan finally cut across her. "You are using private negotiations to humiliate me." The accusation landed hard, but the Queen Consort did not retreat. Meghan insisted the requests were protections against another hostile palace environment. She said they were designed to prevent confusion, public embarrassment, and last-minute changes. In her mind, they were safeguards. To everyone else, they sounded like demands for superiority. Camilla answered with chilling calm. Privacy, she said, could not be used to hide pressure placed upon the monarch. The Queen added that confidential discussions were meant to rebuild trust, not create leverage. Meghan had expected anger. Instead, she faced methodical control, and that made the humiliation sharper. Then Camilla reached the most damaging clause. Meghan had requested advance approval of seating arrangements, arrival footage, and official photographs before confirming attendance at major royal events. Official photographs were palace-approved images used to record ceremonies and shape the public record. Control over them meant control over how status was presented. Harry reacted before anyone else. "I never approved that." The Duke's voice was clear, final. He said he had never agreed to conditions involving photographs or ceremonial placement. Meghan turned toward him, searching for support, but he refused to rescue her from the silence. Meghan rose abruptly, forcing her chair backward. Camilla remained seated and asked one direct question. "Do you deny the wording?" Several seconds passed before Meghan answered. She said only that the palace had given her no reason to trust verbal promises. Charles removed his glasses and folded them carefully. The king told Meghan that his desire to see his son could not be converted into a bargaining tool. Harry looked devastated as his father spoke, because the words struck both of them. William then leaned forward. "Who gave you the details of the king's private reconciliation plans?" The confrontation had exposed ambition, but William's question pointed toward something even more dangerous. Someone inside the royal circle may have helped construct the demands. The balance of power shifted the moment William stood and closed the folder. Until then, Camilla had controlled the exposure. Now the future king began examining how Meghan's requests had been created. who had encouraged them, and whether confidential palace discussions had been compromised. Charles remained at the head of the table, but grief had replaced authority in his expression. The crisis was no longer simply embarrassing. It had become a question of trust. William asked for the complete communication record and made his position clear. No future Sussex arrangement would be discussed through private promises, unofficial messages, or personal intermediaries. Every proposal would pass through a formal palace review, meaning a documented process in which security, ceremonial, legal, and household officials examined each request before the monarch approved it. Charles still held final authority, but his son's role as heir gave him growing influence over royal security, major ceremonies, and the future stability of the crown. The prince understood that one private concession could become a public expectation. He also understood that the monarchy could not survive if family affection repeatedly overruled institutional boundaries. Harry turned on his brother. "You are using this to control everything." The Duke accused William of taking advantage of Meghan's humiliation to block his return permanently. The heir did not react with anger. He answered that the issue was not whether Harry could come back as a son or brother. The issue was whether undisclosed conditions had been attached to that return without the family's knowledge. Charles later withdrew with Camilla to his private study. The king told her that the language about reconciliation could only have come from someone familiar with his personal conversations. He had spoken about missing Harry, wanting peace, and fearing permanent separation. Now those feelings had appeared inside a strategic request. His love had been turned into leverage. Camilla then acknowledged, through the documented meeting record, that she had warned him months earlier. She believed the discussions were moving too quickly, and that private hope was being mistaken for royal approval. The Queen Consort had urged caution, but Charles dismissed her concern because he feared losing his son forever. The monarch read the disputed paragraph again and placed the page face down. "I wanted my son home," Charles said. "I did not agree to surrender the household." Further records identified a former palace liaison who had communicated with Meghan while maintaining relationships with serving courtiers. A liaison was a staff member who carried messages between separate offices. That person knew details unavailable to the public, and may have helped shape the demands around the king's private fears. William recommended an immediate freeze on all discussions involving royal accommodation, formal appearances, dedicated staffing, and special access. Charles approved it. Meghan received the written suspension before leaving the palace. She read the first line, stopped, and looked toward Harry. His face gave her no reassurance. The folder had exposed what Meghan wanted. The suspension now revealed what she could lose, and her first response would determine whether the family conflict could still be contained. Meghan entered the palace expecting difficult negotiations. She left with every requested privilege frozen. There would be no guaranteed apartment, no independent royal office, no automatic ceremonial role, no confirmed balcony appearance, and no private security arrangement beyond standard official procedures. Yet the most painful loss was not written in the decision. Harry walked several steps behind her, and for the first time that day, he did not reach for her hand. Charles remained behind with Camilla as William left beside Catherine. The family had entered the meeting divided by suspicion, but they now departed carrying open wounds. The suspension covered accommodation, staffing, event access, official photographs, security arrangements, and any future representative role. A representative role meant an authorized position, speaking or appearing on behalf of the crown. For Meghan, losing that possibility meant losing the influence she believed had once been within reach. Meghan stopped inside a waiting room near the departure entrance and turned on Harry. She accused Camilla of planning the exposure from the beginning, not to protect the monarchy, but to destroy her credibility before William could lock new restrictions into place. Her anger came quickly. Her control did not. Harry asked one question. "Did you approve the conditions about photographs and ceremonial placement?" Meghan said image control had been necessary for protection. She argued that every arrival, every seat, and every official photograph could be used to diminish them publicly. But the Duke heard another evasion. He had asked whether she approved the conditions. She answered why they might have been useful. William received a second communication before leaving the palace. The documented message confirmed that the former liaison had discussed the demands with a media consultant before the family had approved any reunion. A media consultant was an advisor who shaped public messaging and prepared responses to expected coverage. The discovery changed the meaning of the entire negotiation. The attached notes described a pressure strategy. If the palace rejected the demands, the refusal could be presented as proof that the monarchy remained unwilling to reconcile. That framing would place public pressure on Charles and make any boundary appear cruel. The king's love for Harry had not merely been mentioned. It had been built into the plan. Meghan removed a ring and placed it beside her handbag. Then she pressed both hands against the table, breathing slowly as she fought to steady herself. Harry watched from across the room, but he did not move toward her. An aide entered and informed Meghan that no palace vehicle would take them through the ceremonial gate. The formal route was reserved for approved royal departures. She gave a brief, stunned laugh, then realized the decision was final. Harry said nothing during the journey away. By evening, however, he made one request of his own: a private meeting with Camilla, without Meghan, William, Charles, or palace advisors present. Meghan believed Camilla had humiliated her for power, but Harry now needed to know whether the Queen had acted from rivalry or from a warning he had refused to hear. There were no aides, no recording secretaries, and no prepared statements when Harry entered Camilla's private sitting room. For years, their relationship had carried the weight of old resentment, divided loyalties, and memories neither could erase. Now he stood before the woman who had exposed his wife and asked a simple question. Had she wanted to protect the monarchy, or had she waited for the perfect opportunity to humiliate Meghan? Harry had requested the meeting alone, because formal palace discussions no longer felt honest to him. A recording secretary was an official who created a written account of royal meetings. But tonight, there would be no official record. Only two people, one accusation, and years of unresolved pain. Camilla understood the danger immediately. She knew Harry had never fully separated his feelings about her past from his judgment of her present actions. To him, every decision she made carried the shadow of older wounds. To her, that history made the truth harder to speak and easier to dismiss. Harry did not soften his words. You could have challenged her privately. The Duke told Camilla that reading the demands before Charles, William, and Catherine had been unnecessary and cruel. He said Meghan had been cornered, exposed, and left with no dignity. The Queen Consort listened without interrupting, then admitted that the method had been severe. Camilla accepted part of the blame, but not the accusation of revenge. She explained through the private conversation that secrecy had already allowed the demands to grow. Every quiet concession had produced another condition. Every delay had given the plan more weight. She feared Charles would surrender royal boundaries simply to bring his son closer. Harry then asked about the second envelope. Camilla handed him the proposed announcement. It described Meghan's future palace access as part of an agreed reconciliation framework. A reconciliation framework was a formal plan setting out how damaged family relationships would be repaired. The problem was devastating. Charles had never approved it. Harry read further and discovered the real strategy. The draft would have announced progress before the palace could object. Once the public believed an agreement existed, the king would face only two choices: accept the arrangement or appear to destroy a family peace deal. The Duke lowered the page halfway through and sat without speaking. Camilla did not interrupt. She watched his anger fade into disappointment as he realized that the demands went far beyond security or protection. Harry finally acknowledged the core truth. He still believed Meghan had been humiliated, but he could no longer pretend the conditions were harmless. He should have known what was being submitted in his name. "I will not defend what I never approved," he said. Camilla answered carefully. Rejecting those demands, she told him, did not require him to reject his wife. Harry left with no victory, and no easy loyalty left to choose. By morning, he would have to stand beside Meghan publicly or support the palace decision that had exposed her. For the first time, Harry understood both sides of the conflict. The next morning, the world would discover which truth he was willing to acknowledge. By sunrise, the palace confrontation was no longer private. One newspaper front page dominated breakfast tables across Britain. A photograph of Meghan leaving through a side entrance beneath the words, "Palace demands exposed." Broadcasters debated whether Camilla had defended royal boundaries or deliberately humiliated a rival. Outside Buckingham Palace, a crowd gathered behind the barriers as cameras waited for a response that neither the Sussexes nor the king initially seemed prepared to give. Meghan saw the headline before Harry spoke. She stared at the image, then folded the newspaper inward so he could not see her face. The story had already spread across television, radio, newspapers, and social platforms. A royal controversy meant a private palace dispute had become a public argument about the monarchy's conduct, its rules, and the people entitled to represent it. Camilla watched the coverage from beside Charles, as one broadcaster accused her of settling an old score. The Queen remained composed, but the King noticed her fingers tighten around the teacup. Some commentators praised her for defending royal boundaries. Others condemned her for exposing confidential negotiations that should have remained inside the family. The crowd outside Buckingham Palace became the clearest sign of division. One woman raised a handwritten message reading, "Service before status." Another nearby argued that private family requests should never have been revealed. Their voices rose above the barriers, capturing the two competing judgments now surrounding Meghan and Camilla: ambition against cruelty, entitlement against betrayal. William moved quickly. The prince drafted a statement confirming that no new Sussex privileges had been approved, and that future arrangements would follow established royal procedure. Established procedure meant the formal rules governing security, appearances, accommodation, and official duties. He wanted certainty. Charles feared certainty without compassion would sound like rejection. The king read the draft twice and hesitated. He knew the monarchy needed boundaries, but he also knew Harry would hear every official word as a message from his father. Charles asked William to remove language that sounded punitive. The future king agreed, but he refused to weaken the central decision. Harry then issued a brief written statement of his own. The Duke acknowledged that discussions had included proposals he had not personally authorized. He did not defend the hidden conditions. More painfully for Meghan, he did not accuse Camilla of inventing them. Meghan read his statement twice. "Why didn't you condemn her?" she asked. Harry held her gaze and answered quietly. He would defend their family, he said, but he could not defend words he had never approved. The answer stripped away the last protection Meghan expected from him. Charles understood that silence would only deepen the damage. With public opinion divided, and Harry no longer offering unconditional support, the king called the family together for one final decision. The public had delivered noise, judgment, and spectacle. Now the monarch had to deliver the only verdict that truly mattered inside the monarchy. The final meeting was quieter than the first. There was no dramatic folder, no raised chair, and no sudden accusation. The truth had already done its damage. Meghan sat beside Harry, Camilla remained near Charles, and William and Catherine faced them across the table. This time, the king spoke without hesitation. The monarchy would not trade positions, residences, ceremonies, or public visibility for the appearance of family reconciliation. Any future relationship would begin privately or not at all. Charles delivered the ruling with painful clarity. Meghan would receive no guaranteed royal residence, independent palace staff, fixed ceremonial position, automatic balcony appearance, or special representative status. A representative status meant formal permission to act publicly on behalf of the crown. That door was now closed because the palace could no longer separate the requests from the pressure used to support them. The king then drew a line between family and institution. Harry, Meghan, and their children could still maintain a personal relationship with him, but private contact would never again be treated as a pathway to royal authority. Affection could remain. Privilege could not be assumed. Meghan kept her voice controlled as she said the palace had interpreted every request in the harshest possible way. She argued that protection had been mistaken for ambition, and caution had been recast as entitlement. Yet Harry's silence beside her revealed the deeper wound. She had lost more than influence. She had lost his unquestioning support. Harry finally addressed his father. The Duke said he still disagreed with the way the demands had been exposed, but he accepted that no proposal should have been submitted without his full knowledge. Charles listened without interrupting, then nodded once. The monarch did not celebrate the admission. He understood what it had cost his son to make it. Camilla explained her final motive through the documented meeting record. The Queen said she had not exposed Meghan to claim victory. She acted because Charles's desire for reconciliation had been used to weaken boundaries the crown could not afford to surrender. William then formalized the new rule. Future talks with non-working family members would separate private invitations from royal duties. A non-working royal was a family member without official responsibilities on behalf of the monarch. From that moment forward, affection could never be confused with constitutional access. Meghan rose first and walked toward the door. Harry followed, then paused and looked back at Charles. "I'll contact you privately," he said. The king nodded, but the decision did not change. Camilla remained seated after they left. Charles thanked her, but she answered quietly that protecting the crown should never feel like winning against one's own family. The verdict was final. Meghan left humiliated because secrecy had collapsed around her demands. Harry learned that loyalty without knowledge could become complicity. Charles chose boundaries over guilt. William turned the lesson into permanent policy. Family reconciliation remained possible, but royal authority was no longer part of the bargain. Affection might open a family door, but only service, trust, and accountability could open the palace. And when that palace door finally closed, there was no mystery left behind. Meghan had demanded recognition, Camilla had exposed the price, and the crown had delivered its final answer.